My name is Leonardo Tegon. You can find me on Twitter at TegonL and on GitHub at Tegon. If you want to give me feedback on this talk at Twitter, that would be really appreciated. I work for Plataformatec. You may have heard of us due to our open source work. Plataformatec is known for some Ruby gems like Devise and Simple Form. And the possibility to work on those projects is actually one of the reasons that made me join the company in the first place. But when I got there, most people that maintained those projects, most people that maintained those projects had left or created a new language. Because the truth is, we get paid by clients to deliver projects, right? So as a Plataformatec developer, this is my main responsibility, which means the people that wrote and maintained those projects did it in their spare time. As a consequence, when they left, the projects became inactive. So issues and pull requests would sit there for months, for weeks, with no response. And I wanted to help. So I decided to maintain the Devise gem. And if you're not familiar with Rails, Devise is a full-stack authentication solution for Rails. It comes with features such as authentication, registration, account locking, email confirmation, and so on. So it's a pretty big project in the Ruby community. It has a lot of users. If you work with Rails, you probably have seen it somewhere. So this is how things look like when I started. We had 150 open issues and 51 pull requests. And this is how things are right now. I took this picture like 2 days ago or something like that. These numbers are still a little higher than I would like them to do, but you can see that it's much better right now. So the idea of this talk here today is to tell you my story between this time is almost 2 years now that I've been maintaining this gem, and the things that I struggled with, the mistakes that I made, and the lessons I learned from them. And because I know a lot of people want to contribute to open source, but some people think they're not good enough or they don't know how to start. And hopefully my story can convince you otherwise. If you wanna try it, hopefully I can inspire you to go ahead and try it. And the first thing that I can say to you is you are good enough. I really don't think there's anything special about open source maintainers. I think anyone can do it if you want to, but I really think it's hard to start. This is the first thing the first question that came to my mind. Where do I start? How do I start doing this? And one of the reasons I think it's so hard for us to start is because when we say contributing, we think we have to write code, right? Code is the thing that matters for us to start helping that project. And in order to code, in order to solve a bug or to write a feature pull request or things like that, we have to understand the code base, right? And understanding a code base often takes a lot of time and effort, especially a big code base like Devise. So there are other ways to start helping. The most quickest one, I think, is issue triage. If you don't know what that means, bear with me. So triage is the process of examining problems in order to decide which ones are the most serious and must be dealt with first. But for open source, it means to ensure that issues follow the recommendations of the project's contribution guide. So what does that mean? Some projects have a contribution guide like this. This is a file with guidelines on how to report issues and how to contribute to that project. And it has some rules, like for example, the Rails framework does not accept feature requests in their GitHub. So if you open a feature request in there, they're definitely just going to close the issue. So that's why the first thing that I recommend you if you want to contribute to an open source project is to read this file. So you can have an idea of the things the maintainers are expecting for you. So you don't lose your time doing that. Open a feature request and then it gets closed. It is a bad experience. Some projects don't have one of those. If that's the case, you can open an issue asking for them to create one, which is a great way to start contributing to. So this is in Devise Contributors Guide. This is what we ask for contributors when open issues. We ask for a title and a clear description, as much relevant information as possible, and either a test case or a sample Rails application that replicates that issue. We ask for information because it's hard to fix bugs without enough information, right? We probably all been there. Someone says your site's not working, something's broken. The first thing we do is start to asking questions, right? Which browser are you using, or which is your operating system, some things like that. And we also ask for them to try to reproduce the issue in isolation, that sample Rails application. And by isolation here, we mean you have to try to run it without any other libraries, just with Devise and Rails, and without any of your application code. And we say that because the most common case is expected to be working, right? So we have tests for it. We think the signing works, for example. So unless a lot of people say things are not working, that issue is probably caused by a combination of things that's very particular of their application. And I'm not saying it's not a bug in the libraries, might as well be it, but by trying to reproduce in an isolation, people can have a better idea of the combination of things that's causing that issue, and that can give us a better direction of where to look at. And maybe you can even find the solution in that process. So this is the first thing that I did. I would just go through issues that I was not able to have enough information to solve and ask people to send it. And then I would add this label, needs more info. One thing that I want you to notice here is that you probably see that I replaced this person's handle with ghosts on GitHub. My idea here is to talk about situations and not individuals. It is just easier for me to use real examples to talk about the lessons I learned, but I don't want to expose anyone in here. So you can probably still find out who those people are, but I ask you not to. And so sometimes we ask for information and people don't reply. They never came back. So after 2 weeks, I would just close the issues that don't have any response. I know 2 weeks is like an arbitrary time, but it seems like a good time span for people to get back at us. So if they didn't yet, maybe this is not that important for them at that time anymore, or maybe they were not able to reproduce it in isolation. And I know some of you might be asking now, why do you have to close the issue? Why can't you just leave the issue there and work there later? I mean, maybe that person can come back like 4 or 3 months later. And for me, I think it's good for us to close the issues because it's kind of like a pile of dirty dishes, right? When things look like this on your kitchen, it's really easy to just use another glass and throw it there without having to wash it. And it feels overwhelming to have to wash all of this. It's going to take a lot of time and effort, so you just don't feel motivated to do it. And this is what happens with issues too. Because for a maintainer, every open issue is a work in progress. You feel like you have all those tasks, those pending tasks to complete, and it may make people to just give up to doing it. So we try to keep only the things we are actively working on open. Another thing we ask is avoid opening new issues to ask questions. And please go through the project wiki, documentation, or try to ask your question on Stack Overflow. And on this matter, I just want to say it's very important to ask questions, but the issues tracker might not be the best place for it. And I say that because only the maintainers and the watchers of the repository receive notifications of issues. So watchers are usually there to know about new releases, security issues, that kind of thing. So those people usually are not there to help. They're not going to answer any questions you send there. And the maintainers are usually just not that much people. Sometimes it's just one person. And so it gets hard to be able to answer all the questions. And when you ask questions on forums like Stack Overflow, the community is wider. There are more people to be able to help. So that's why we ask for that in the contribution guide. But this will depend on project to project, and each community is different. I know some projects accept help requests in their issues trackers and they work well. some projects also have mailing lists for this, and it also works well. So it will depend. That's why I say just read the contributor guide first. So this is the second thing that I did. I closed the questions, and since the project had a lot of open issues, we had a lot of open questions, and we won't be able to answer all of those. But I do know it's hard to ask questions. It's easy to forget when you get experience how it was like when we started. But I do remember I was afraid to ask questions at work. I was afraid to interrupting my colleagues and things like that. I was afraid to sound stupid. So this is something that I've been trying to do a little bit different when I can. When I notice the person might be a beginner, I try to give them a better answer. Maybe to reply to the question if it's not that hard, if it's not going to take that much time, because I don't want their first experience to be that bad, right? It takes a lot of courage to ask a question, especially in a public forum like Stack Overflow. So this time, one person said that the flash messages, Devise flash messages were not showing. This is the thing that appears in the top of the page right after you sign in, like say successful signing in and things like that. And this is something that I knew already. Rails does not show flash messages by default. It's something you have to do it on our own. So I just gave that person the answer and link to the documentation. But I also, advise them to use Stack Overflow in the next time. This is the kind of question that would be answered pretty quick in Stack Overflow. So in summary, issue triage is a great way to start. I could start quick. I could feel productive right away. It didn't require any knowledge of the code base. So this is very important. As humans, when we put effort in something, we want to get rewards quick, right? If we don't get rewards quick, we might just give up. So if I had got a ticket, a huge bug to fix or a feature to develop that will take me months, I could have just give up. But by doing this, I could feel productive, like the issues were getting closed, and then this kept me motivated. If you wanna try to do this in a project where you're not a maintainer, this can also be helpful for you to get to know how the maintainers of the project work. You get to know which problems the project is facing. You get to know what the maintainers ask for pull requests, if they like unit tests, if they like integration tests, things like that. So it's just, if you want to contribute to a project, it's a good exercise to just go ahead and read a bunch of issues to have an idea of how the maintainers work. Because when you start writing patches for that project, you're much likely to have an accepted patch, and to give a contribution that is going to the direction that the project wants to go. I recommend this article if you are interested in this, how to be an open source gardener. Here, Steve Klebnik mentions that he used to do this 15 minutes per day. So it's also easier to start because you can do this before leaving office or after coming back to lunch. I do a lot of this while I'm waiting for CI. So it's kind of, it's a good way to start because you don't have to invest a lot of time on it. Now you might be saying that I'm not a maintainer, how am I going to do this? And I say that the only thing you can do is actually click on the merge button or close the issues and things like that. But you can comment. People are doing this in Devise already. Like this person asked for a sample application. And this other person who asked a couple of questions to clarify an issue. So you can do this. You don't need to be a maintainer to do it. So issue triage is a good way to start, but there are also other ways. You can review pull requests and give feedback for people in their code, look for issues. You can ask for tests. If a pull request is sent without any tests, this is the first thing that I will ask it for anyway. You can test the solution, and this one is a very important one, I think. If you if you are experiencing an issue and you find a pull request that seems to fix that particular issue, test that version of the code with your application and see if it works, and comment back in the pull request. Having a second person confirming that the issue is solved will help the maintainers a lot. You can try to reproduce an issue too. And you can share your solution. If you discovered how to do something, you can comment on the pull request, like this person did, to share your solution. You can answer a question in Stack Overflow. You can write a blog post. There are a number of ways of doing this. And you can also write documentation. This is one of the first things that I did, because when I started, I struggled a lot with Devise's test suite. There are a lot of particularities where you have to run in different Rails and Ruby versions using two RMs, one for SQL, one for MongoDB. So once I discovered how to do it, I wrote this piece of documentation in order to help future contributors, so they don't have to get through the same process that I had. So what I want to say here is that open source is more than code. For me, open source is about helping people. Code is a way to do it, but there are also other ways to do it. So yeah, we don't have to write this code for that. Just a second. Now, what happens when people send that application, right? So you have the code, and now I had to go to the other step. Now you have to reproduce the issue, and sometimes this means following reproduction steps, cloning their application, running a failed test case. But the important thing is which kind of issue that is. Some issues are regressions, which means something used to work and it doesn't anymore in this version. For this particular case, we can use git bisect to help us to find the commit which first introduced the regression. I'm not going into the details of bisect here, but I recommend this blog post if you want to see how it works. But the more harder issues are unknown issues, right? There are things that never worked before, or is a combination of things that are making something not work. So it's hard to find. And for me, this is kind of when you just join the company, one company, and you got a ticket to work on without any kind of onboarding, and you're like a little bit lost, and you have to dive into the code, and it's pretty hard to try to understand a piece of code you never read it before. I really like this code about this. Yeah. So one thing that helped me was the TRIAGE. If you work with Rails, you probably know it already. If you come from another language that has one IDE, this is just a debugger, you're probably already familiar with it. I wanted to include this part in this talk because before having to deal with Devise, I was mostly just sending logs to STD out, to debug stuff. And then here I really had to learn how to use a debugger to, because there are so many internals and so many layers for you to go through the code. So maybe if you wanna try Pry, I have a couple articles here that helped me. And I also have this article, Reading Your Framework Source Code, which is more language agnostic, and the person here talks about like some techniques to understanding on a no-code base, like looking for unit tests, for example, to see how things work. When you call a function, which result it returns, and things like that. So after I find the code that causes the issues, time. Yeah. So I really like this. Once you find the code, you have to understand what it's doing. I like this quote from my colleague Hans, where she says, it really summarizes well the feeling of reading a no-code base. We are measured in a long learning curve, in a continuous cycle of questions and doubts. So we start to wonder, what are they thinking when they wrote this? This makes no sense. They could have just done X instead. But the truth is, we have no context of that change, right? We don't know The only information we have is the person who wrote it and the date that was committed, but we don't know why they did it. So I want to share a situation that matter with you. So Devise has this feature called trackable, which basically keeps a bunch of stats of a user when they sign in, like the RP and their signing out. And someone opened an issue saying that we were creating invalid users in the database. So basically you have validation say, okay, this field cannot be blank or things like that. And then we were still creating those users in the database. And the reason we are doing this was because we are using validate false. We are just keeping those validations when we update, their signing out and those stats. So this looked like an obvious change. It's a one-line pull request. I merged it, and we considered a bug fix. So we released in a minor version. Everything is good. But then things starts to break, right? You got 1, 2, 3, 4 issues. You get the idea. The thing here we didn't predict is that since this code, skipping validations was there for a long time, a lot of applications were relying on this behavior, which means once we change it, things start to break, right? This made me realize that we have a limited vision of the world. We make assumptions and decisions based on our past experiences, right? So take me, for example. I was the one reviewing this pull request, and I looked to my past experiences. All the Rails applications I worked, we would strive to have valid modules in the database. So for me, having an invalid module was a very uncommon thing. But by the number of the issues we got, we can see, I could see that is not that uncommon, right? And then we got, come back, this one. This one was the final issue that we got it. Basically, this person was calling an external service that charged them per request in the validation callback. And since we started validating the module in a place we were not before, they got a huge bill, right? So this was pretty bad, and it made me feel very bad about it. Made me realize maybe I'm not very experienced to do this. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. But then in those situations, what I try to do is ask for advice. Try to ask to talk to other people. I talked to some other open source maintainers and to my colleagues. And so we all agree, since this is being so much trouble, it's better to just hold back the change. Since we broke backwards compatibility, it's better for us to release this in a major version, so people don't get surprised about it. But also, I replied to this person. I replied to this person in the pull request because saying that we are going to fix the issue by using another solution, and also advise them to just try to not call external services in validations callbacks, because they can be called for a number of places you don't know of. From rake tests when you're reporting data, and people may say that code review and tests may catch this, but as your team grows, someone new enters your team, it's harder to keep track of this. So it's just better to keep those things explicit since they are charging you for this. So this is the second lesson. It's okay to make mistakes. We make mistakes in our personal lives. We make mistakes when we code for our companies by coding product features. So we are definitely going to make mistakes in open source. The good thing is that we can learn from them, right? So one advice that I give you is when you make a mistake, try to change questions like what should I have done to what can I do from now on, and try to learn from them, because now after this issue, this made me a better open source maintainer, because I try to think like in all those strange ways people might be using that code, all the strange ways the code might break for things that we are introducing, and I'm way more conservative by accepting features now. So this can make the library more stable for the users. But after that, I tried to look to the original commit, you know, to see why are we not running validations. And this is how it looked like. This is not much helpful, but one information that I got for this is the date it was committed. So this code was 9 years old when I measured the pull request. So you can see how many times this was being used, and this gives me to the next lesson. It's important to document your decisions, right? Because it would be great, you know, to just ask the author of a code when you have a doubt, but sometimes you don't have access to these people, and also even if you do, they might not remember, you know, because it's been almost 10 years they wrote that code. I mean, would you remember something we wrote 10 years ago? I know I wouldn't. So write documentation. Explain why you did that change, which other options you tried, things like that will help not only other people but also you fit yourself if you need to change that code in the future. And a good way to do this is in Git commit messages. I recommend an article to learn. There are two here. Oh, yeah, this is 5 tips for a better committer message. And also this one talks a little bit more about the structure of a commit message, so it's good. Those articles have helped me a lot to improve the way I write commit messages. And for me, this is what I call a good commit message. You have a brief summary saying fix Travis build, you know, you have an idea of what was done in here. And if you expand the details, you can see that the person says why that change was needed. And also it gives us a hint that we can remove this code once we drop support for Rails 4. So in the future, when we do drop support for Rails 4, we are more confident that we can remove this code. And the next lesson that I learned from the trackable issue is that code is expensive. That one line pull request causes a lot of trouble, not only for me, but also for the users. So we have, right now when I have to accept a feature request or a change, I try to ask more questions, you know, because once you publish something in an open source library, if you want to remove it, you have to deprecate it, right? You have to release a major version. You have to go to deprecation cycles. The code becomes more complex and harder to maintain. So I try to ask those questions. Is this reusable for other applications? Maybe it's solving an edge case that is very particular to that person, so it might not be working. It might not be worth it to add it to the library. Is it flexible? Does it allow configuration so that other applications can use it in a different way? And is it too complex? If the code is too complex, it's going to be harder to maintain. So this is a nice question to ask too. The next thing that is lesson in open source is to be nice. This is a very important one because I know a lot of people had bad experiences in open source. Some people are disrespectful, rude, and sometimes mean. So one thing that is important to do is to have a code of conduct to ensure that everyone has a harassment-free experience on that project. And as a maintainer, you have to act in cases where this code of conduct is disrespected. But really, what I say here is, yeah. So yeah, this book is a recommendation on violent communication. It helps. Sometimes we really don't even notice when we are being rude with other people. So this book is a nice one to read it to get better at this. But what I try to do is to respect other opinions. I try to not make fun of people for something that they said, and you know, you have no context. You don't know that person. You don't know what they are going through. Some situations that make someone to communicate aggressive are pressure situations like very like deadlines and product audits. Those things may make us to communicate aggressively. So I try to not be mad at everyone, try to ask questions before I jump into conclusions, and try to have empathy. For those cases, if the person is just in a hurry, they might be rude to you, but try to have empathy in that case. Like, I have a particular case here. So this person said that it's a bug, but it seems like unless the bug affects many people, no one cares. And when I read this, the only thing that I could read was the no one cares part. And I was like, really? You know how many time I invest in this? So yeah, it made me upset and a little bit angry. But when those situations happen, what I try to do is to follow a very little tip which is called give it 5 minutes. This is a post by Jason Fried. He's actually talking here about how when someone tells you an idea, you don't disagree with them right away. You wait 5 minutes to give them a response. But I apply that. I try to apply that in situations where I'm angry, because it makes you. By that time you wait for 5 minutes, maybe those emotions are gone, and then you can give them a better answer. But for me, what works best is to give it a day, actually. Yeah, it's better because 5 minutes is not always enough, and in a day I have time to do other stuff that I like, to fill my mind with dancing and sports and things that I like. To spend time with my friends, things that will make me for sure calmer to talk to them. So by giving in a day, I was able to not be rude with that person, because the real problem here was that that person commented on a closed issue, and I really can't keep track of the notifications of closed issues. So I just said to them, I'm sorry, but I can't see those notifications. There are a lot of them. So if you wanna grab my attention, definitely open a new one. That will definitely work. So yeah, so this is by giving a day, I was able to really see what was happening there and giving a better answer. The next thing I want to say is take care of yourself. A lot of people burn out in open source. It might feel overwhelming because there's always going to be another issue to work on. There's always going to be another pull request. Don't try to finish everything. You're not going to be able to. Don't feel like you have to do it, and rely on automated tools to help you do the job. Issue templates are good to give people a better direction of what you want regarding information of issues. GitHub saved replies help me a lot too by doing issue triage. So you can I have a template for a bunch of things, so you can close the PR in really fast without having to write the same thing over and over again. Stalebot is also nice because it just closes the issues when people do not respond in a time span. You can also source level, which is an automated code review tool. Basically what we'll do, it will run linters on your code and comment on the pull requests like this one. This also helps so you don't have to be reviewing code style changes and things like that. If you want to try this out, go to sourcelevel.io, use my code. This is a discount code. You will get like 50% off in an annual plan. So give it a try. And also ask for help. Ask for help for your colleagues, for other open source maintainers, and also ask for help for the community. This is one thing that it took me a while to do it, and I want to share one situation. So we got a security issue, and we fixed it. We released a new version and moved on. And then this person asks whether a CVE was being assigned or not. And I've heard of CVEs before, but I didn't know exactly what they were, and obviously I didn't know how to request one. So I was insecure. I was insecure to say that in the issue. So I searched a lot and just replied like a month ago, a month later, when I was able to actually request one. But it turns out the person who asked it was Reed Luden, who worked at HackerOne, and he was able to help us to get the CVE really quick. So if I had been honest in the first place, that would have happened way faster. So don't try to feel like you have to know everything. You don't, and obviously we can't. So don't be afraid to say you don't know something and ask for help. Another thing that is very important is to show your company why open source is important, because we don't want to do it in our spare time forever, right? So if you want to try to sell to your company why open source is important, we learn a lot in the processes, which allow us to write blog posts and to give talks, which will be good for the company branding, and also may get them more developers. It also helps with motivation, because when you are working in the same thing over and over again, it might be good to do something else for a while. And this might also help with your turnover ratio. So if you let the people in your team work a little bit on open source, then that might help them to stay in your company. And also with professional development, since you are learning a lot, you get to grow as a developer too. That's why some companies are doing open source Fridays, letting people work full time on open source on Fridays. At our company, we were able to get paid extra hours, so we still had to do it after work, but at least we get paid for it, which is better. And so this is basically my story. If you wanna, the only thing I wanted to get out of this talk is you don't need code to help. There are plenty other ways to start. When you do it, document your decisions. Your future self and other contributors will definitely thank you for that. And be nice. Try to be respectful with the other people, and ask for help. Don't try to solve everything on your own, because open source is about collaboration. So don't be afraid to ask for help. I know that I had a lot of help. I had help from Jose, who gave me an initial direction of how to do issue triage. I had help from Rafael, who was there to answer a bunch of difficult questions about semantic versioning, for example. And I had help from Felipe, who is my former colleague. He's actually the person who motivated me to contribute to Devise and to also give this talk. So I would probably haven't done any of this without him. So I want to thank all those people. I want to thank people who use Devise and who have helped to Devise, and also all of you who are here today to watch this talk. And that's it. Thank you.